Okay, so this is week 7, day 3. We're going to be doing the Bootstrap review. Probably just do a build out of a project just to kind of review all of the different components that we discussed. Maybe get a little bit into how we would structure our HTML while we're getting into that, just so we can get a little bit more review on that as well. Before I get started, does anyone have any questions? All right, so to get started with Bootstrap, we go to their documentation page, and that's the getbootstrap.com. And once you're on getbootstrap.com, you want to scroll down to where you can import their CDNs. We're not using package managers yet. This is something that will be coming soon, though. So we will be able to install these as dependencies eventually here. For now, we're going to use the CDN. I'm going to grab this link, which is a link to a CSS file. We can see that it has the rel style sheet, and it actually has a CSS file on this link here. So let me put that inside of, I already created my index.html to put this in. So we just put the link at the top, and you want to make sure you have the correct link. If you're ever reaching out to, say, Stack Overflow or even using some sort of AI solution, a lot of times it'll get the link wrong because it's not using the latest version, or maybe you're finding an old code base. So make sure you're checking that you have the correct and most latest version of Bootstrap whenever you're importing it. And here we can see we have version 5.3.2. So that's good. Also, they've added this integrity attribute recently. So you want to make sure that you're importing one that includes that as well. Otherwise, it might not work correctly. And let me grab the JavaScript import from Bootstrap. And that's this one here. Again, you want to make sure you're grabbing the latest one. Bootstrap used to use a jQuery solution for this, and they've changed over to this 5.3.2 version of Bootstrap that no longer uses jQuery. So this right here is the correct link. And I'll place that at the bottom of the body. I could put this in the head if I put the defer, if I put defer like that on that. Then I could move this into the head of my document. I prefer to have it at the bottom, though. That's just where I'm used to finding all of my scripts. So I don't put defer. I just put it down here as normal. And it works fine like this. Let's check the browser and make sure that we do have the updated font. We have the results for that. So we can see that that's working correctly. All right. So I'm just going to do like a little bit of a build out of a normal web page. So I'll just kind of lay this out the way I would if I were building this in normal. So typically I'll start off my web pages with a nav bar. So I'm going to go to the Bootstrap documentation. I'm going to find that nav bar component. I'm going to go to their docs, and then I'm going to go down to their components. And here we have navs and tabs. Here's nav bar. So I just like to use their sample code. This one looks like it has a little bit of everything on it. We have a disabled link. We have a drop-down link. We have a search bar, a search button. We have this smaller link, and then we have our home, which is currently active. So it has that kind of brighter color, and we have a logo there. So this has a little bit of everything. I could just come down and grab a very basic version if I only wanted the logo on one side. If I wanted to have something like this, if I didn't want the search bar and all that. But we can always modify it. We can edit everything out of here and kind of customize this for our own needs. And that's the normal workflow of how you use Bootstrap like this. You just grab their sample codes and modify them based on the documentation. If you work with this enough, you'll eventually start to memorize these different class names. If you get to that point, then you'll be able to build this out through your code editor a lot quicker than coming to the documentation and actually copying and pasting and editing. So there is benefits to practicing with Bootstrap. Let me paste in this nav. Let's see how that looks on our page. Oh, so there it is. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see what this looks like a normal size. So we have a little search bar here. We have a drop-down link with some stuff in there. So what I would want to do now is actually tailor this to the page that I'm working on. And that would mean not only changing the content of these, but also changing like the ID names and any sort of information relating to them to something a little bit more meaningful. So I'm going to go up to the top here. Let me kind of make this like almost like a side-by-side type deal so we can see what we're working with. And we'll Control B that out. So looking at this nav bar, I don't need this disabled link, so let me find that first. So here's an LI with an anchor tag in it for a disabled link. And now that's gone. I'm going to remove this drop down as well. We can see that this has a UL that says drop down menu as a class. We can also see this drop down text here. And this is the content of this anchor tag. And here's the LI. So this looks like the most outer part of the drop down. So I'm going to remove all of this. And now we just have a regular link. And I'm going to duplicate this link a couple times. Okay, so now we have these 3 links and we have our home. And notice that home is currently active. We can see that in the code right here. We have the nav link with the active class on it. And the active class is just whatever page you're currently on, you want to apply that class. So let's give these links a little bit more meaningful names. We could say about. We could say references. And I'll just throw a sign up in here as well. And we can get rid of this search bar. I'm not going to use that. So the search, I can see there's an input here for that. There's a form. So it looks like it's just this form. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of that. And those are now gone. So we have this really basic looking nav bar. Nav bar is called nav bar. I want to update that. This would be the name of our actual web page. Notice this ID here is called navbar supported content. We'd probably want to make these something a little more meaningful that were related to our web page and not just navbar supported content, especially since this is using ARIA. The ARIA has to do with accessibility. And if it's just called navbar supported content, it doesn't really help with accessibility at all. So let's change this logo. We'll just put in something random in here for the name of our site. I'll call it Spotlight. Just some random text. And then we would want to have this button. I believe it's the Spotlight button. So we'll call this Spotlight. And we're just updating all of, let me see, this is an ID. I want to make sure I don't have 2 IDs with the same name. I don't see any on the button. So yeah, I'll call this one Spotlight as well. Let me see where they're using that old one. Okay, they're using it above. Okay, so this is a little bit more tailored toward our own custom site now. So you just want to make sure that whenever you're building something out on Bootstrap, you just kind of go through these different attributes and you're updating the labels and the IDs and everything with stuff that's more tailored to your solution and not just a generic name. You want to make this very customized and not look like you just copied and pasted code off of Bootstrap. It's not the most professional way to make a solution. So this right here is just one of those things where you're just going to kind of go through it with a fine-tooth comb, look at every single line, make sure that it does have everything you want. So we updated our content, we updated our IDs, and we even updated these. This is data Bootstrap target. This would be used for the navigation. So we click that and it just takes us to a hashtag because we're already on the home. And these don't go anywhere because we haven't actually wired any of these links up. As we build out our page, I can actually build like areas on the page that uses these. So we'll look into that as we go. So there's the nav bar. That's just the top of the page just to kind of get us started. So next, I'm just going to create, we'll do like a carousel. This would be like our hero area. So let's take a look at the carousel solutions. Again, we're looking at these different components on here just to kind of get a refresher on how to find them and how to use them. And some of these are what they are too. So here's an example carousel that has all these different slides. Seems to be working pretty well. We have for our images, we have these 3 dots. We'll have to update that. We'll have to update our alt text. And carousel example for this target, we'll definitely want to be updating that. And we can see that this is a previous and next button. So we'll actually just rename these to previous slide and next slide. All right, so let me copy this into my code. And I'll place it here underneath of our nav. And let's update this SRC. I'm going to use the Unsplash random images link. So that's https://source.unsplash.com/random. And then we're going to put in a query string by putting in a question mark. And we'll put in the parameters city night. And then I'm going to copy this down and then change the parameters on each one. We'll do peck night. And we'll do casino. And I'll put day for that one. So for the alt text, we want to make sure we're always updating our alt text. It is very important. Don't skip over this, even on like little projects that are only going to be for portfolios. Because whenever you build something out for a portfolio, you may have to do a code review with a developer during an interview on projects you built just to kind of show them what you can do. They may say, hey, show me something you built. So you'll come into your project and you'll do kind of a code along thing with them where you're explaining this line by line, just a normal code review. And if they see you're skipping over the alt text, they may find that a little bit concerning. So just make sure you put something in there so that it shows that you know that you have to have alt text. Even these small details really do matter. Also, adding comments in your code definitely makes a big difference as well. It also allows it to be more organized and modular. All right, so there's all our alt text. And then for these, I'm going to put prev button and next button. Okay, so those look like they're all up to date. We're using a width of 100 here. We may have to change this a little bit or put this inside of another container. This carousel should be hero images, something like that. Actually, I did mess that up. I apologize. This right here should be the same as these buttons, so that these buttons are wired up to the correct one. So whenever you're tailoring this, you do kind of watch that you don't make all these random. It is an easy mistake to make. But I noticed that when I went back to the documentation, this ID is carousel example. and each of those data attributes are also carousel example. So there they are. And I noticed they also have a hashtag in front of them, so we want to make sure we include that hashtag there as well. So everything looks to be the same now. So let's see if this is working correctly. So here's a large image, and I hit the arrow and it goes to the next one. So it does seem to be working correctly. But that width of 100, we're telling it to be the full width of the screen. That's okay. It's the height that I want to adjust on this to make this more like a hero image. So let's try to change this to H25. And I'll add this to all of them just to see what it kind of looks like. I may have to put this into a container and set the container to be 25. Yeah. So I could probably do it here. Yes, Crystal.
Random question.
Sure.
What do you use again to copy and paste that so fast?
Copy and paste what exactly? I'm sorry.
You know how you're copying and like how you're pasting. You're doing it pretty fast. I usually can't do it that fast. So
Which part did I copy and paste specifically?
no,
Like
well, you
out
well,
of the
when you added the height,
documentation.
yes.
So the height, I didn't actually copy and paste. I just typed H-25.
No, I'm saying you added it to
So I
This
think
whole
she's
thing.
talking about the small tab where you press the tab and it copies the whole thing.
Oh,
That's,
okay,
I
gotcha.
think that's what she means.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mean in the documentation when I click this little button here?
No, not there. When you okay, now I'm confused. But I get it now. I get it.
So there was the hero images. I copied those and I pasted them down here. I just highlighted and pasted. Was there something else you seen me copy? I'm sorry, I'm confused. I don't.
No. When you added the H25 right here, and then you added it to the other
Okay, yeah, the
images as well.
H25. I just typed H25. I didn't actually copy and paste it.
No. I'm saying how you added it to the other images as well. When you
Maybe
type
I
it
did
in.
copy it. Yeah, so I
No,
might have did H25.
yeah,
Shift.
and then you added it to the other images as well. I was just wondering how you did it that fast.
Like that.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, so whenever I wrote it, I don't know if I did this initially. I wasn't really thinking about what I was typing, but I hit H-25 and then I held Shift and I pressed left 4 times to highlight it.
Oh, okay, I got it now.
Yeah, and then I could Control C, and then I was just kind of navigating with my keyboard, so I wasn't really thinking about. Sometimes like little shortcuts like that, I'd take them for granted. I don't even. So yeah, I don't always use the mouse to. Yeah, if you hit like Shift left 4 times, it'll highlight the whole thing. Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste it.
Okay, I got it now. Now I see.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad we could get that cleared up on that. So as far as the solution goes, I don't want this to be this tall. So that's the issue we're dealing with right now. Let me see what yeah, we're at 100%. So I'm going to try to put this in a wrapper. And let's see where this ends at. I believe it ends here. So this outer div, I'm going to give it a class of container. That took my width away. So we'll do container fluid so that it does go the full width. And then I'm going to put H25 here and see if that shrinks it down. Did not seem to. I may actually have to set the height on this manually. Let's see what they have in the utility classes for setting height. So here's our sizing. I'm hoping maybe I was just using that wrong, but it doesn't look like it. They're setting their manual width there. Display inline block. That might be necessary. I'll give it a try. Doesn't seem to be working for that. So I'm going to put a style attribute on this and see if we can just hard code that in. So we'll just style, height, we'll say 600 pixels. And it did not seem to overwrite it as well. Let me find that outer one. This is the kind of things you'll run into whenever you're dealing with. Yeah, we can actually see that's being overwritten right there. We have an H25 with an important on it. See if there's anything else taking our height away. Yeah, it could just be the scale of the image as well. I may have to adjust the image size through the URL in order to get that to be a lot shorter. There's probably a better solution than this. I'm going to take another look at this and the sizing and see if we can come up with something that works out well for us. Here they're using the style attribute with a wrapper, which is similar to what we're doing. So this container fluid might be part of the issue here. We remove that, remove this, and I place the height here the way they did it. And we'll say 600 pixels. And then I might be able to place the actual H25 on the inside one. So let's take a look. All right, so the height definitely applied now, but we can see it did scale it. And it's got some weird behavior going on. So this probably isn't ideal. And that's because the images coming in are so big when they come in, and the styling's not being applied until after it's done with that little animation. So I'll definitely have to just adjust the images, which is what I normally would do with images, is actually set my widths and my heights on it. So I believe I can say H, or I guess it would be over here. It'd be, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly how to set this URL up. Let me see if I can take a look at the, so here we actually get it. They do have some information in this URL. Fit max. Might be able to use this fit. No, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Yeah, I'm not sure how to actually get the image resized without saving it and then adjusting it there. So we'll just work with what we have for now, and I'll see if I can maybe change the height here. Sorry, this will be style, height, and 600 pixels. And that does set it to 600. But again, we're dealing with that weird behavior. I'll just have to work with that for now. So they're all set to 600. And now I'm just going to stretch the width so it takes up the full width. If it lets me do that. That's the third image. Yeah, so it does it for a second and then it scales it back again. I may have to remove. sometimes you gotta play with this stuff to get it just right. And this is one of the annoying things about using a framework like this is everything's kind of pre-made. So you just got to work with what they have and then try to get it from there. So there we go. It's going the whole way across. This is what we wanted. Yes, the scaling is off. That's something we have to fix with object fit. But it does do exactly what I was going for. It gives us 3 images. It takes up about 3/4 of the top of the screen. So this is what I would call like a hero. Sometimes you could put a button right in the middle of this. It would be like a sign up button. That's something you would use absolute positioning for. Another good use case for that. And you would also do this. You could use Bootstrap for that. I believe they have the absolute positioning. Yeah, they do. So we could place a button directly in the center of this using absolute positioning. And that could be like a sign up button or an enter the page, something like that. And then while that button's sitting there, over top of this, this is slowly scrolling through these, showing us the different images. So to give it a nice little touch, we'll go ahead and actually do that just for that little bit of practice. So let's find a button. And we'll use the success. I think that's a good button for this. So I'm only grabbing one button. There's a whole lot here, so I'm not going to click the copy to clipboard. I'm just going to grab the one I want. And that button has a class of BTN and then BTN success. And it also is a button element. You don't have to use a button element. You could change that to be a div or an anchor tag or whatever you want it to be. It just needs to have these classes on it. That's the important thing. So I'm going to place this button. I can go above my carousel or underneath of it. I'm going to go above with it. And so it should have it directly above the carousel. And there it is. So next we'll go back to the absolute positioning. And we want to put, we're going to try this one here. It's position absolute top 50, start 50. It looks like it'll try to get us somewhere in this area here. Notice it's not perfectly centered, but it's pretty close. So here they actually have something. Oh, this is perfect. They have a way to center it. So we'll use this one actually. So that way it's dead right in the middle there. And we'll put those classes on the button. And this is how you use these utility classes. You come into here, you see what the class names are called, you see what they do, and then you just add the class names to whatever component you're trying to manipulate. And let's take a look at that. It looks like we might have a z-index issue where the button is behind the carousel. Let's take a look. So there's the button. Yeah, so the button is currently behind the carousel. So let's see if we can bring that to the front. Let's see what they use for z-index. So in the utilities, here's z-index. And all this does is it allows things to come to the front or send it to the back. So currently our button is behind the carousel, so it can't be seen. So we want to bring it to the front. Let's see, where is... we have z-index, and it goes up to 3. So Z3 is the highest level. So let's apply that. And there's our button in the middle of the page. We're going to rename that from success, though, to click here now. So this is like a call to action. It kind of entices you to want to click on this on their little sign up page. So you can scroll through this, and that button's always there. So a real good example of where you would use absolute positioning. As I would scroll down the page, the button would remain in the middle. I don't have enough content to scroll just yet, but when I do, you'll see that it actually does work like that. Does anyone have any questions about these utility classes, about any of the process that I've gone through so far to make this work the way it's working? Anything at all? Is there any confusion about like how I was able to get the button centered or get this carousel to fit where I wanted it to fit? All right, we'll continue moving on. If you do have any questions, just feel free to let me know, and we can address anything that you might be confused about. Next, I'm going to bring in an accordion. I'll put the accordion underneath of the carousel. So an accordion, they're used a lot, actually. They're very commonly used. So at some point in time, you may be asked to create a web page that has an accordion on it. And you want to be kind of familiar with the process of this. And this is one of those components where you can do this without Bootstrap using just CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. I wouldn't recommend it though. It is a nightmare to build one of these manually. It can be done. I've done it as like a challenge before just to see if, how difficult it is. And it is doable. But again, I'd recommend just using a framework. Here's an example of one. So notice I'm going to refresh the page. This top one is already open. If I refresh, it's open by default. So that is something to note. If we look at the actual component here, there's some sort of attribute holding it currently open. So we'd have to compare the different components to see which one is keeping it open and how its state is being set. So this one has collapsed as a class. This one has collapse. This is a button that has collapsed past tense. Another button with collapsed past tense. So let's look at this button up here, and it doesn't have the collapsed. So that's what's holding it open. So just want to kind of look through that, note it. And let's go ahead and bring this in. I'm going to use the whole thing because typically when you have an accordion, you do have more than one item. Unless you're just using it to kind of hide content. That's not an uncommon practice. Maybe you have a small image right here and you have a caption underneath of it. And this could say learn more. And then you just click a button and it pops the text down. You can learn more about the image without having to view it at all times. I believe they also have a button version of this somewhere. It may be in a different location. I did use it before off of here. I'd have to dig through their different parts to find it. But there is another version of this that it has a separate button somewhere else on the page. And when you click it, it opens up the accordion. So it is useful. So let me copy this in. And I'm going to go under my carousel and place it here. Let me start putting in some code comments because this is already getting to be a bit messy. This is going to be here's our hero section. Call to action button. Our nav bar. So again, I'm adding these in here just so as I'm scrolling quickly, they kind of pop out and I can find these components quickly. It's really helpful later on whenever you're trying to update things or change things. And it's like, where is the beginning of this? Where is the end of that? And that's another thing. You can also put a second comment here if you wanted to, saying that this is the end of the nav. I'm not going to do that because I have a comment here telling me this is the beginning of the next section. So that would imply that that's the end of the nav. However, if you're scrolling from the bottom to the top, it would be a good way to find where does the bottom of my nav begin without having to scroll past, find the top, and then scroll back down. So if you want to, you can put comments on both ends. I'll do it just once just to show you what I mean. I put a code comment here. I could say bottom of nav. And I'll put a little bit of space between these. And then what you would do is if you're scrolled all the way at the bottom and you're scrolling up and you're looking for the bottom of your nav bar, you'll see the code comment and you'll know this is where it all begins. And then if there's, especially for really large components, like our nav bar almost takes up the full width or the full height of my VS Code. So whenever you have a component that large, and sometimes you'll have them much larger than that, it's not always a bad idea to put a code comment at the bottom of the section as well. But I typically just do it at the top. But it's just if you like it, go for it type of thing. All right, so this is the hero section. So next is going to be our accordion. All right, so I'm just going to copy this right over. And then next thing we would want to do is update all of this information. So we have a Bootstrap accordion example thing going on here again. So this is going to match the ID at the top. So if I scroll all the way up, so here's the top. Here's our ID accordion example. All of these data Bootstrap parents, they need to be the same. So what you can technically do here is Alt click. So I have my cursor after the E, and then I can Alt click after this E, and then I can find other ones to update. Alt click. And what this is doing is it's giving me multiple cursors so I can type in all of them at once. So if I have a cursor here, I have a cursor here, and I have it after every single one of these. So as I update my ID, it's going to update all of those data pieces as well. So what kind of data do we want in our accordion? This is going to be general information. So that's what I'm going to put here is general information. And we should see an accordion here now. The top one's open by default. I think I want to have it closed by default. So I'm going to add that collapsed class to make that happen. So here is, let's find that button. Here's a button and it has collapsed on it. So I'm just going to copy and paste that so I don't mistype it. And then I'm going to look for the rest of the buttons. So a little trick you can do if you're looking for certain elements, if you click on an element, it'll show you all of the elements. I'm actually double clicking to highlight it. It'll show you all of the elements called buttons. So there's the one that we're looking for. It's highlighted. It pops out easy. And we have another button up here. Let's see what this is. Oh, this is for the carousel. I could tell that because my code comment here. If I didn't have this code comment, I might have kept going. So this is the button that we're looking for. So we're going to add the class collapsed on it. And it didn't seem to collapse it by default. So that might be part of the styling that goes into the collapsed. Yeah, it looks like it changes it a little bit. So I need to find what is actually being applied. I can just look at my DevTools here and it will tell me what's changing. I just need to find it in my DevTools. So it's nothing yet. And we can see all the classes changing here now. This one has a show on it. And now it doesn't. So we have accordion collapse show. And then I click it and we have accordion collapse. So let's find that show class. And now it is closed. But notice we still have that coloring. So that's the styling I was talking about earlier. We need to make sure that we add the collapsed class so that now that styling is gone. So now that it's closed by default, and again, this is one of those things where if you're using Bootstrap and you want things to be done a certain way and it's not exactly the way you want it, you'll have to come in here and kind of figure out how to manipulate it. So again, if you see I was using my DevTools here, every time I click on it, if I can find it in here again, we can actually see the class names changing, and that's how I was able to define what to actually change in my code just by watching that happen. Another way you could have done this is by copying and like deleting item 1 completely, and then copying and pasting item 2, and then changing the content in it, and that would give you the closed version. But sometimes you have to do things like this where you're just watching the DevTools for things changing. So we could see that happening there. And it's a pretty cool little trick to use. as it's using JavaScript to make this work. So JavaScript's actually adding class names. Now that we're familiar with JavaScript, we kind of know how this works under the hood. So we know that there's a click listener on this element, and when you click on it, it has the add event listener. It has a callback function, and within that callback function, it's selecting the element and saying add class. So it's doing all of that behind the scenes. So we click on that, and we can see that that class just got added. And then we have a class list dot remove method. We click on it, and it's gone. So it's good to know under the hood how this stuff works, because it could be a good way to figure out how to make it work the way you want it to work. And you could always customize some of this stuff using JavaScript as well. You could override the current JavaScript with your own JavaScript. So keep that in mind. Again, some of that can be a little tricky. I noticed my button's moving there a little bit when I click. It's because we're adding a scroll bar. So when we have a scroll bar, the button's at that elevation. When we don't have a scroll bar, the button's there. So the scroll bars are actually pushing that around a little bit. That's something to actually, that's a really interesting thing that's happening right there. Those tiny little details like that are things that you definitely want to watch out for when you're doing design, especially if you're going to be presenting this to somebody. Those little details can really make a big difference. Somebody with an eye for design will notice that. They'll see you open that, and they'll see that button move, and they'll be like, what's up with that? Why is that button moving? And then they'll know that it's absolutely positioned and your screen size is changing, and all of that can be changed. You can adjust all of that through JavaScript or through CSS as well. You can make this all behave differently, but those little details, you got to watch out for them. And then you may have to find solutions on your own as well on how to make that work. One possible solution might be to set this relative to the image, because notice the carousel isn't moving. So we're currently relative to the body. The body is what's changing. So that would be the easiest thing. Just set the button relative to this, and then we'd have to nest it inside of that container. So that's one possible solution there. There's a lot of ways we could approach it. Yeah, just something I wanted to be really aware of that is happening right now. Let's change these accordion item names. I don't like having too much default stuff going on. We'll do information about our company. And we can do I don't see it updating. Am I putting this in the wrong spot? Let me do a search for accordion item. Okay. So this is the accordion section. Oh, I'm sorry. I was typing in the wrong file. Okay, so we'll make this information about our company. There we go. Now those are updating. So I'm just putting some new content in here so that this is more realistic looking in a way. I'm not going to change the inner content, just the outer content, just to show that this isn't that generic. But at the same time, this in here is very generic. You could change this out with lorem ipsum if you wanted to. So you're not having that default Bootstrap stuff, so that it's not as obvious that this is coming from Bootstrap. Somebody might not recognize it for what it is. And especially whenever you bring in a template, which I'm also going to be doing today. We're currently just using the default Bootstrap stuff, but I will remind you how to bring in your own custom Bootstrap or use a template for that. Does anyone have any questions about this? All right, let's dive back into these components. I just want to talk about these spinners again. I want you to remember them for whenever we actually start getting into stuff that has a delay. So we could do this. We could actually make this work right now using Bootstrap, where the page loads up, or sorry, using JavaScript, and we could set a some sort of timer to make these work. Basically, sometimes when you're retrieving content from the internet, there's a delay, and it could take 3-4 seconds to actually load that content in. It could be an image, it could be anything. And you can use these spinners to hold the place of the page until it actually retrieves the content from, let's say, a database. Databases take time, especially if you're pulling a whole lot of data. You've probably seen these. For example, if you're scrolling on social media, they have some sort of spinner or some sort of animation as you scroll down and it's loading more content. That's where you would use something like this. So these are really useful. You can also get some off of that Iconify. I just want to show that real quick as well, because these can work the exact same way, but you can get some more options using another library like iconify.design. And I'm going to hit Browse Icons. And I'm going to scroll down. I'm sorry, at the top here, I'm going to hit Animated Icons. And then here's our SVG spinners. So there's some other options here for animated things, you could say. And you could use these in place of the Bootstrap stuff if you didn't want to use their spinners, because they are kind of limited here. They have this one, they have some dots showing up. So there are some choices here, but if you don't like any of these choices, you can always go for Iconify, and you can bring them in using the JavaScript and the HTML, or you can just bring in the entire SVG if you want. If I wanted to bring in, say, this one, for example, you could actually just copy all this SVG here. I'll hit the little copy button. And I'll just throw this in my document temporarily to show you what it looks like. I'll put it underneath of the accordion. So again, this is a lot of stuff here. We're not expecting anyone to interpret any of this stuff. And whenever I format it, it gets a little much. Notice this is taking up a lot of my document here. So this is one of the reasons I don't really go for the SVGs all that often. But sometimes if you don't want any JavaScript on your page for some reason, if you want a JavaScript-free solution, you can bring this in as an SVG and you will have zero JavaScript then. And you'll have a little bit of animation going on. So there it is on the page. It's doing that little loading thing. It looks like something's trying to load at the bottom of the page. It'll just do that forever until it actually retrieves something. Now, if we had some JavaScript implemented here, I could put this into a container. I'll actually put it in a container just to show you what I mean. We'll say div with an ID of spinner. And I'm just going to copy all of this stuff and paste it into here. And then using JavaScript, we could delete this div by selecting it. I'll just show what I mean real quick. I'll create a quick JavaScript file. Actually, I don't even need to create a JavaScript file. I'll type it right into the HTML. So at the bottom of my page, I'm going to create another script. And you can write your JavaScript directly in here. So I'm going to say const spinner equals document.query selector, pass in our ID of spinner. And then we can do something like after a certain amount of time, delete it. So I'll put in a set timeout. And we'll put in our callback function. And we'll do spinner dot remove. And we'll put this on a 5-second timer. So after 5 seconds, it goes away. And then after it goes away, we would then load the content that we were waiting on. So if I had some new content in here, I'll actually just create a little bit. We'll do const p equals document dot create element. We'll pass in that paragraph. We'll give it some content. Enter text equals. Something I haven't shown you, I just want to share this real quick because it is a useful thing. I'm going to back this up a second here. I'm going to make this a div instead, but I'm just going to call this content. And we're going to make this a div. And something I haven't shown you, which is useful, is you can actually write HTML inside of your JavaScript. It's not the most common way to do this. But if we want, I'm just going to go up here and grab a little bit of content. We'll grab this bit of text here. I'll grab the whole div, actually. I'll remove the class in the bottom. And so instead of doing inner text, I can do inner HTML. So we'll say content.inner HTML equals, and I'm going to put in a string and just paste that in. Oop. I might need to use template literal here for this, because we have the class with the quotes. Let me delete that class. The formatting doesn't work that well because this is a string in JavaScript, so it's not sure how to work with that. But let's see what happens after 5 seconds. So there it went. I didn't append it though, so let me add that little bit left. Content, we're going to append the content to, we'll have to append it to the body. So I need to select that, document dot query selector, pass in body, and then I'll do dot append child, and we'll pass in content. I notice I didn't put this into a variable. I did it all in one line. This is called chaining. So we have this method, query selector, and then we have the append child method. We're just chaining them together. That's perfectly valid. So let's make sure this is working. Oh, wait, it already is working because I didn't put it inside a delay. So the add to document part should happen after it's removed, like that. So we wait our 5 seconds. And again, this is just to show you how these spinners work. And it's done loading, and it loaded our content. So it was a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I think it is important to understand how these spinners work and why you would want to use them. Sometimes content takes time. In this case, this content takes 5 seconds because we built it this way. We told it to take 5 seconds. But if we were integrating with a database, that does take time, and you would want to have it. So wait until you get your data from the database. Once you have your data, go ahead and append your content in. Again, you can do this. I have all these different HTML elements being appended inside of a div here. So let's take a look at that inside of the elements. And it has that class of accordion body. That's because we're looking at the wrong one. There we go. Here's the div. And there's that strong element and everything that was included. Does anyone have any questions about how I did that? I know that was kind of quick with the JavaScript here. Most of that is review. But again, I just really wanted to iterate over these spinners because they are very useful. And I highly recommend using them when your page is loading, because it is kind of jarring whenever you have delayed responses on your page. For example, if you have really large images, you can actually set a timer. You can load the content behind the scenes, load it into your JavaScript as a variable perhaps, and then send it to the page once it's fully loaded. There's also a thing called lazy loading. The way that works is if you have images way down your screen, they won't load until you scroll down to them, or until you're scrolled just above them, right before they're visible, then they load in. That's used just to like save data on mobile devices. So you don't want to load the images in right away. You might want to put a spinner in for that as well, just to make sure that the images are it's clear that something's loading, if they're going to take a little bit of time. All right, I'm going to comment all of this out. And we'll just keep the spinner there. We'll keep it spinning. Actually, no, that's that big SVG. I'm going to remove that. I'm sorry. We don't want to fill up our entire document with an SVG right now. So with that, I'll remove this script as well. Just so we can keep moving forward with this. Okay, so we have our accordion. We have some content in it. We have our carousel. We have our call to action button. I think we should put some cards in here. Maybe have some more images on these cards. I'll start putting those in. Let's take a look at the documentation though first. Here is the card. And I kind of like that this one has like a button on there. It's got the image at the top and then some text. There are some more basic versions. This one has a card title and subtitle and some text with some links in it. So you just got to look through this. We're looking at this piece of demo here, and then we're looking at the code underneath of it. This code creates this here. So just remember that when you're looking through this documentation. Whatever code you see here, if you want to know what this looks like, well, it's right above it. So that's how it's going to look. Here we have an image. Places an image at the top of each card with card text and can be added to the card. This is the one I think I'm going to go with because this one is very basic. We have a little caption at the bottom. That one looks pretty good. You can have a card with lists. I don't think I've ever used a list card. And then this one has everything. It has the image, it has the text, the list, and the links. We have header and footer. So again, you just want to look through all this documentation while you're using this stuff. And even if you kind of know what you want to do, check through and you might see another idea that could improve what you're working on. Here we have the block quote. Yeah, a lot of cool cards here. Again, I want to use that one image, this one here. So I'll copy that in. And I'm going to do this as, get that out of there. I'm going to do this with a container. So we'll just create a section here and give it a class of container. And then within this container, I want to create these cards so that this is kind of a responsive build. So what we want to do is make it so, depending on your screen size, it will automatically kind of rearrange. So there's a few different approaches for that. One of them, you could use the Bootstrap grid system. That allows you to kind of lay things out so that, let me just bring that up real quick. Look at layout. So here's the grid. This is for a form. Where is grid? Oh, it's because I clicked on form. There we go, grid. So this is where we use our rows and our columns, and we can change how many cards are on the page based on the width of our page. So this would be a large or above screen size. It's going to have 2 columns on a large or above screen size, is what this is saying. So it always goes from whatever you put in and above. It's a little bit backwards to how media queries work, so it kind of throws me off sometimes. The medium size to auto is saying just decide based on the width of the content. Let's take our 10-minute break real quick, and then we come back and I'll actually build this out with the cards and with the using this responsive design. All right, so I'm gonna start the 10-minute timer. Before I do, does anyone have any questions? Just want to make sure I'm not leaving anyone in the dark here. We're going break. All right, so no questions at this time. So I'll start the 10-minute timer, and make sure you're taking your break. When we get back, we'll get into this cards. And I'll see you in 10. All right, welcome back. So let's dive into this responsive design, putting in them cards or images, and making this so that it would respond on mobile or large screen size. So here we can see the different column. So what this means, like column small 8, this means on from small screen sizes, we're going to have 8 rows. So there are 12 possible, sorry, I said rows, I meant columns, or content spots, whatever you want to call them. There's basically each cell, 12 cells total across that we can use in space. So as we can see here, we have 8 and then 4 because these are side by side. So what this does is it gives us a total of 12 content places for this element to take up. So we can also put more than one in at a time. For example, here we have column 6. This would be your mobile screen sizes. Typically, you would write these mobile first. So column 6 on a mobile screen size, because it always starts with, by default, when you don't have like anything above it, it'll start on the smallest screen size. It's going to take up 6 content spaces. And then when you get on a medium screen size, it'll take up 4 content spaces. And you could also put in here a large one and tell it to take up 2 content spaces on large. Typically, you want to decrease your content based on your larger screen sizes so that it spreads it out across the page a little bit better. So let's see what that looks like. We'll bring up our document so we can see things happening. So I'm going to start off by creating, well, I have this container here. I'm actually just going to change this to a row. That way we don't lose our margins. I could do container fluid, but it's not really necessary since we're going to be doing this grid system. So we'll do a row first. And then inside the row, I'm going to place my first card. So let me go to the actual card component. I'm going to put a wrapper in first, and we'll actually put our mobile screen sizes on this wrapper, and then I'll put the card inside of that. It's just a little bit easier this way. I could put it directly on the card, but sometimes you get bugs doing that. So it's a good idea to just put in a wrapper and then put in your sizing on that. So we'll do COL 12. So there'll be 12 columns, and this is going to mean that on a mobile size, this will take up the entire screen. It'll go all the way from left to right, and then we'll do call medium. So on medium screen size, we want to take up 4 grid spots. And then we want to put our card component inside of here. So let me go to Bootstrap and get the card component. And let me find that one that I wanted. Here it is. And I'm just going to drop that right in here. All right, so our source is ... Let's change that to use that Unsplash link again. Just scroll up and grab that. There it is. Copy this link. And go back down and paste it in. So our SRC has that link. I'm going to change each of these, though. I don't want them all to be the same. We'll do something like nature, water. I'll have those 2 parameters. I'll just put that in here. Looks like I got a typo there. Let's fix that. And we have this some quick text. We'd want to have text describing our actual card. So down by the water, we have a gift shop. Just so we have some content in there. And let's see how this is looking on our page. Here is our card. It's right up against our accordion. We can fix that with a utility class. We'll just do it here. We'll say MT-5, and that'll push that down. So our entire row got pushed down with that margin. Also, we don't have a lot of space on the left and right of our page here. That's because we're not using that container. I'm actually going to put that in there because I think that would look a little better. So we'll just say container. And then, yeah, that brought that over a little bit. So it also shortened it. Actually think I like that better. Actually, never mind. If I refresh, it'll change. Yeah, so it's just the image was a different size. So if we wanted our image to be locked to a certain size, we'd actually have to set that. We could do that here. We could say max. Oh, I have to do, sorry, I have to do style first. Max height. We could do 280 pixels or something. Actually, I'm just going to set the height instead of max height. Let's see, that way they're all the exact same. Yeah, so that seems like it worked. We got those locked to that height. Even the scaling looks okay. So let's put in some more cards now. So basically, all I got to do is copy this column 12 container here, because this is what is actually determining our content within the row. So we have our row, now we need to have all of our columns. So I'll put a second one in. And this is a good time to start including comments. So top of card. So I actually want to copy that in as well, because when you're starting to go through all of these, it can be hard to find where things end and begin. So that definitely can help. So let's put that in. And now we have two of them. So we'll give this one a little bit different. We'll do city landscape. And then I'd want to have some text relating to that. So there's another card. They have different heights because they have different amount of content there. We could set this card body to have a set height. That way they're all the same. We would do that by saying height, I'm sorry, style outside of the class. And then give it a height. And we could give this a hard-coded height of, say, 80 pixels. And now they're both exactly the same. This could get a little weird if you don't have a whole lot of content and you make this one really long. Also, you'd have to deal with overflow if these get too long. So that's one thing to keep in mind with that. So let's go ahead and add another card. So there are 3 cards now. And let's see what happens on mobile screen sizes. So I'm going to hit this toggle device, hit mobile small, and then we'll scroll down. And there we can see our card is taking up 100% of the screen height. Notice they're right up against each other though. So that's something else we can adjust. We can put a little bit of margin top on that to fix that. One thing I like to do whenever I'm actually building websites, especially if I'm aiming for this mobile first design, which is considered a good practice to do, is I'll actually leave my page exactly like this. I'll have my dev tools over here. I'll have my screen in this mobile view and mobile small, and I'll build my entire application exactly like this. Because I kind of look at this button right now. This looks a little weird. We might want this button to be down a little bit lower. So things like that. So you build your entire web page in mobile view, and then when you're done, you expand it out and you see how do things look on larger screen sizes. So look right here, we got some weird behavior there. So that would be something that we would have to adjust. From my experience though, it's easier to go from mobile to large desktop than it is to go from large desktop to mobile when you're doing design. It is significantly easier to scale up than it is to scale down. So let's just add a little margin top on each of these. We can do MP-3, and that spaces them out nicely. Again, we're just using that utility class. Now we're getting kind of stuck there on that scrolling. I'm not sure what's up with that, but I can scroll with my finger. That's what this little dot represents. It's supposed to be a finger on a touch screen. So it gives you an idea of how this would behave if you were actually touching the screen. Okay, so those look pretty decent. I'm just going to duplicate this a few more times so that we can see what this looks like when we have, say, 6 cards total. So actually, I'll just duplicate all of them. And that will give us our 6. Okay, so on mobile screens, looks awesome. I know I have a lot of the same image right now. I don't want to go through and just update all that content at the moment, just for time's sake. Let's go ahead and close the mobile view. And there we have 3 side by side. We do have a little bit of sizing or spacing issue going on here. I believe it's because of the margin top. Let's take a look and see if maybe we're missing this on one of them. Yeah, so this one doesn't have any margin top. So I did miss that on a few of them, and it did throw things off. So there's that one. I'm just going to highlight top of card so I can have that stand out to me a little bit. Okay, now all of our heights are correct. So that gives us 6 cards across. No matter how wide we get, once we get down so small, we do have that little bit of overlap issue there. That's something that we would have to address by adding in another value. So what we could actually do to correct that, we're currently going small to medium. We could add in one more here. We could say column and put this on SM. We may have to adjust that a little more. Yes, Omar.
Just a quick question. This extra coat showing in pink or red, is it going to make any difference, or is it okay if it stays there? Right next to margin top 3, they're showing an extra coat.
Next to it? What do you see?
Yeah, empty-3. You see?
Yeah, this. Oh, yeah. Good catch. What this could do is actually break my prettier. If I hit. Yep, see, prettier is no longer working.
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking, because maybe that's what was happening with me yesterday. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, so that is a good catch, and I have that in a lot of spots. So I need to find all of those now, and that's the problem with copy paste, is if you have a bug, you're copying and pasting that bug as well. We still have that little bit of overlap issue going on. Let me look at the mobile size for that and see where that actually happens, what breakpoint we're on. Okay, so we're on the 997. So this is actually showing us our media queries here. These are the Bootstrap media queries that are built in. So we can see when we hit that screen size right there, it's not happy with it. So maybe I need to make this large instead of medium to fix that. And I'll have to actually duplicate this down. And up. You can add in more breakpoints by adding in your smalls and everything else, but I don't think it'll help in this case. Yeah, so it goes down to 1 pretty early there. This is one of those things where you'll just have to play with it. Maybe add in a medium here. And instead of having that at 4, have it at, we could try 8. And this is basically how you do design, is by trial and error, and you just keep working at it until it looks the way you want, basically. So let's drive that down. Yeah, it's still not quite what I wanted. Maybe if I center it and make it a little wider on that screen size, it would look a little better. I'm not going to put too much more time into that just because it is a little bit of a complex thing, and the amount of time I would have. Yes, Omar?
What if we assign the value for medium instead of 8, we assign 6? So all of each one of them has 2 columns. I mean, yeah, 2 columns each.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because
Yeah,
it's not
very
dividing
bad. That
evenly.
would take up 50% of the container then. So that should actually fix it. Yeah, good catch. I wasn't really thinking about the actual content size on that when I chose 8. I just wanted it to be a smaller number than 12 and a larger number than 4. So I just picked one at random. Again, a lot of this is trial and error, but I should have thought that one through. Yeah, that's exactly what I want there. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That was perfect. And then we could also center this using our utility classes. So this would be kind of going into our layout. We might be able to throw a margin auto in this. Let's see if we can do that on the container. I'm not sure what margin auto actually is anymore. I'll have to look at that again. Where's my utilities? There's our positioning, spacing, vertical align. Is there a horizontal line? We'll take a look at vertical align. This doesn't look like what I'm looking for. Wait, what's the CSS for this? I don't think that's what I'm looking for. And this is one of them things where sometimes to get a solution, you just have to kind of dig through this. Layout. I'm just going to search for it. There we go, M, and it's probably M-auto. Yeah, that'll add the margin auto. And as long as it is a sized element with M-auto, it should center it. Let's go ahead and try it. There we go. That looks centered. Again, so as long as it's taking up the full width, it has to be a block element. And then the content within it has to have sizing. As long as those are the cases, you can put margin auto and it will just automatically center all of your components for you without you having to do display flex and then set your justify content, align center. That would be my next solution if I couldn't get it to work through margin auto, is I would actually use Flexbox in that case. I believe this should already be setting flex containers. It is. At least it is there. Let me find yeah, this is already a flex container. So let's take a look at that and see what we actually are looking at here. So we have our display flex, we have our flex wrap turned on, and it looks like we are in a row. So I could use justify content center as well. And I believe it's called justify center. Let's see. It is justify content center. Okay, so it's the whole thing. And that would also get us centered without the margin auto. Does anyone have any questions about that utility class? All right, and then I think I'm just going to add a footer on here. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to really cover on Bootstrap. Most of this, again, is just going through and just navigating your way through it. We could talk about the alerts. I believe there is one on here that's similar, the badge. The badge is used for like if you have a new post or where'd that go? And that's actually what they're using in the example here. You could do this for if you had a e-commerce website, if something's on sale, you could just say like sale 10% off, anything like that. So definitely some good use cases for the badge. The alerts, these are kind of like the alerts in JavaScript. The ones that like, actually I didn't show those. There's a library that like pops these up. All it is, as you can see here, is just a div with some coloring on it. And you can have this say like account created successfully, or in this case, maybe you have documentation and be like, make sure you secure your API key, or if this is a finance website, do not share your password with anyone, things like that. Caution may cause injury. You could put like some sort of disclaimer inside this yellow one, and that's kind of where you would use that. The other alert I was talking about, there's one for JavaScript that pops up. Where was that at? It might have been the tooltip. No, it wasn't the tooltip. Actually, forget which one that was. Oh, the modal is what I'm thinking of. The modal's the pop-up. So I'm actually going to put a modal in. I like modals. So this one has a close and a save. And that's what it looks like. So it's kind of like the alert we used in JavaScript, except it doesn't interrupt your page. It allows the code to keep flowing. This doesn't like pause everything while this is up. So I feel like it has a lot more use cases for it. So let me bring this in. This one has this launch demo button. I'm going to bring all of this in for the moment, and then I'm actually going to put this into my nav bar to actually pop this up. And then I'm going to change the content out a little bit. So let's bring that up here. Let me close this mobile view. And I'll use the sign up button as my trigger for the modal. And it doesn't really matter where you put it in your document. I'm just going to put it at the bottom. And now when I scroll down, I should have that button and that'll pop up like that. So let's actually wire this up now to where it's working the way I want it to. This button, so it's set to the example modal on this ID here. We're going to call this sign up. And this is an example mobile label. So we'll do sign up label and sign up label. Change out this H1. This is an H1, so you got to be careful with this because you don't want to have two H1s on your page. This one will be hidden until you click the button. But if you do have H1s already, you might want to change this out with something else if that's the case. We don't want to have a save button on ours, so we're going to remove that save button. We'll keep the close button, though. That's important. Which one was the save? Here it is. And then the content. For this content, I'm actually going to bring in a form, a Bootstrap form for that. So for now, I'll put to do. We'll put a Bootstrap form there. And we'll see if this is still working. Okay, so we got our sign up. And instead of just a close, I'm actually going to put a submit there. Actually, that kind of makes more sense. So we'll do a button class btn dash success. And then we need to give it some content. Just like that. Okay. So where is that button at? Here it is. I want to put these on the other one in my nav bar. So let me scroll up to my nav bar. And now I'm looking for the sign up link. Here it is. And this go on the anchor tag. Oh, they're not on the class, they're extra attributes. So if I click sign up, we now get the modal coming up. And then inside of there, I'm actually going to put in a form. So I seen it earlier. There's an entire section dedicated to forms. Here they are. We'll do form control. See if we have any good examples already pre-done. Email and password. This is a good start. I'll just grab these and drop them in. We can always add more as needed. We'll find our to-do. Got a lot of content on this page. So here is our to-do. I'll just drop in that form. And let's see what the default looks like. Sign up. And we have an email and a password. We actually want this to be a form as well, not just a content piece like that. So let's go back to here and find the email. Sorry for the fast scrolling. Here's an email one. It looks like it's pretty good. So we'll bring that one in instead. I grabbed that div, so I'll grab the one here. Let's find the closing div. And I'm just looking over what attributes were on that already. And let's see what it looks like. All right, so we have some differences in styling here. Let's take a look. We have our label. We're going to make sure that these are the same. What I could do here is actually just convert the other one to look like the top one. Or I could convert the bottom one to look like, I could do it either way. Let's see, this one has the class of form label. This one has a lot of other things. So I'm just going to grab these ones and put them up there. Ooh, that looks horrible. Maybe we'll remove it off of this one. Okay, that's at least a little bit more uniform. That's probably good enough for that. And then we would want to have like a confirmation password. So we can just copy and paste this again. I messed up the copy paste. Let me see here. Yes, there's the closing tag for that div. I knew I messed it up because my prettier started yelling at me. There we go. And instead of just password on the second one, we'll make that confirm password. We don't have any JavaScript logic to actually check that these are the same, but that's how you would do that. You would use basically an event listener on this form, and you would check that your email was correctly added, that it has an @ sign, that it has a dot something at the end of it, and that it has the proper structure. And you could add a minimum length to that as well if you're comfortable doing that. There could be some short domains out there, so be careful with that. We could also add like a username tag in here if we wanted to. And then we have our password and confirm password. So for these two, we would want to grab both of those with JavaScript and say this element strictly equals this element. And if that's true, then continue with the submit basically. If it's not true, then you'd want to throw in an alert. And we could use a Bootstrap alert for that if we wanted to. If I go back up to the alerts. You could make it small. You don't have to make it a huge alert. I believe it's under components, actually. So we could throw in one of these, like this red one that says passwords must match. Doesn't even have to be an alert. You could just put in some plain text right here, have like a little asterisk, and then throw in some text and say passwords do not match. You could also do that so that as you're typing in your password, that it tells you they don't currently match. That's also possible to do using JavaScript, using a change event or an input event. Basically, as you type, any sort of typing at all would be tracked, and then it would start comparing these instantly and giving you live output. So that is something you can do as well. Does anyone have any questions about this? Yeah, so the modal is pretty cool. You get a lot more control over this than you do, like, say, alert like this or prompt. So this one here, it gives us our URL. We have a little bit of text. We can't do any sort of styling to this at all. And it also pauses the entire page right now. So like I can't click on anything at all. Nothing works. It just interrupts everything. It's not the best feeling. It does have uses. If you're working in an industry where you're not like selling web pages to consumers, you have some sort of commercial application for this where you're working in, say, a warehouse, and that warehouse has a private web page that's only available to the employees. You could start throwing in some prompts and some alerts for your functionality, just for some quick down and dirty functionality, so you don't have to build out entire forms. There are places that have web applications that they're not on the internet, they're on their local machines and accessible on their local networks across all of their computers, but not outside of their industry. So if you start building solutions for companies like that, feel free to use things like this, because a lot of times those type of applications don't have to be pretty. They might even tell you don't put any CSS in. Just make it functional and make it work is like going to be the ultimate goal in cases like that. So feel free to use these ugly alerts or a prompt, and you could put in your question, email. Do something like that. And then they would type in their email address, press OK, and then it would ask for their password. It would ask for confirmation. And then you'd get the same result, but this gives you a lot more control. You got styling. I can't like click on things on the page, but also clicking on the page closes the modal. That is behavior you can disable if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it. It's pretty common for a modal to be closed by clicking off of the modal. But perhaps for a sign up page, maybe you don't want to close it unless they click the close button. That way, if they have a whole lot of information to fill out and they accidentally click, they just lost all of their information. Unless you're storing that information in local storage, and then when they click on this again, it'll auto-fill these forms back out to where they left off. That is another possibility. We haven't talked about local storage other than me briefly mentioning it once. But basically, it's a way to store a JavaScript object. And if you remember right, that is, I'll create one real quick. I could do email, and I'll just make this an empty string. And then I could say password and make this an empty string. And then as this object is, as this sign up button is populated, every time you type a letter in here, it would update this object here, and then it would store this in your local storage, which lives under application, local storage, and then you would click on your current URL. And Iconify does use a little bit of local storage, so we have some there. But we can see that this has an object right here. If I scroll over, we can see that object. It has a prefix property. It has last modified. So yeah, this has some properties already assigned to it within an object. And that's basically how it works. You just store it in this little area. And then as soon as you click on the modal again, you'll check, is there anything in local storage? If yes, fill out my forms for me. So just some kind of behavior you can think about, especially when you start thinking about your capstone projects. If that's some sort of functionality you would like to implement, go for it. Don't be intimidated by learning new things. If it's something we didn't cover in class, don't let that be a blocker to you. Try to do it. Go for it. If you can't figure it out, let one of the TAs know, let myself know, and we can help you implement some of that more complicated logic. These capstone projects are going to be looked at potentially by employers. You're probably going to want to put them on your portfolio whenever you have a good portfolio. You're going to want to have a list of projects on there to show off. And anytime you have a project you want to show to an employer, you're going to want it to be basically as cool as you can. You want to have as much functionality as you can. You want to have it look as good as you can. You want to make it very professional. And you just want to show to people that, yes, I can build really nice stuff. You're going to want to hire me because I can do this. And maybe it's a company that's looking for new developers, and they might say, let's see what you're willing to do and what you're willing to learn. They'll look at these projects and they'll see that functionality you're adding in. They'll see your attention to detail, little things like this button moving whenever the scroll bar is there permanently now. But before, that button was moving. So not having behavior like that is a good thing. Having this move the way it is right now, I know if I were looking at this, I would actually test that and look for those little details, because those are common bugs that I've ran into myself. And also they just kind of bother me. Does anyone have any questions at all? All right, so I'm going to start getting into today's breakout rooms, our little workshop assignment. Again, we don't have anything to submit, but we do need to be practicing this stuff. We need to be using this. So maybe build out a page that looks similar to this, have some cards, have a modal, put in some sort of button using their absolute positioning. Use as little actual inline styling as you can. Try to use everything in Bootstrap for now. Throw in a lot of this stuff and make it look as good and as professional as you can. Maybe you can even get a head start on your capstone project now. Just kind of getting that general layout built, deciding on what you want to make, and starting to dive into it. And again, you can literally make anything you want as long as it fulfills everything we've learned in this course, and it's something professional and something you might want to share with a potential employer one day. This could be a clone of a website you like. It could be a fan page for something you like. You could make a web page for Spotify, and that just showcases your favorite songs. You could throw some album art on there. And it's not Spotify's website, but you could make your own version of what you would like it to look like. You could make a website for your local pizza shop. Maybe one day you could even sell it to them. You could say, hey, look, I made this website. Do you want it? And you could host it for them and get paid for it. So think of things like that. I did one earlier that was a grass cutting web page. I believe that was in week 2 or that was week 3. I actually implemented like a little bit of a side business where it was like a grass cutter. You could build something like that, something for like a small business. Another thing we can do is W3 Schools. They have a Bootstrap thing in here. So it's actually up here at the top, you'll see it if you go to their homepage. And we want to go to Bootstrap 5. The older ones are using the jQuery, and they have a little bit different setup. And over here, we actually have a list of all these different things. It wouldn't hurt to go through these too one of these days. If you have some extra time, just kind of go through and read some of this stuff. A lot of it's interesting. And as things updates, W3 Schools will also update. So come back and look at this stuff from time to time and see if there's anything new. Utilize YouTube. There's a lot of good YouTubers out there, content creators pushing out the latest changes in web development. Even things that are like, this is an experimental feature, check them out, because if they're experimental now, they might not be forever. So we have our exercises here. It looks like you just put in the class names. I haven't actually done the Bootstrap exercises on here, but they could be pretty good. Use Bootstrap class to center the following text. So this is actually a really good practice here. This might be perfect. So you would have to go into here and see how you would center text. So we want to look at I believe I actually seen something about this in here already. Text. And text center would be the class name to put in. So we'll just say text-center and submit, and we get correct. So this is really good practice here. If we're just going to be putting in class names, we can try to find a way to actually like solve these little problems. So check this out. Oh, we have our spinners in here. So fill in the missing part to create a loader that grows instead of spin. So in order to solve this, you would have to go into the Bootstrap documentation and find the solution. So this is an excellent practice, an excellent resource. Highly recommended. Practicing building something out is also really good practice because things will go wrong. And a lot of times you learn more by breaking your code than you do just by writing your code, especially whenever half of it's already written for you here. But again, this is still something like, I don't know these off the top of my head. Bootstrap classes are something that I have to look up every time. I have to use the documentation because I don't use them on a daily basis. I actually forgot to show you. I apologize for this. I'm going to go backpedal just a second here, just to remind you about the templates. I mentioned I was going to show you this. I want to make sure I bring this up now. So I use Bootswatch. It's BOOTSWATCH. I'm just going to do a Google search for Bootswatch so we can see what that looks like. And it's the top link here. And you just come in and you download the one you want, basically. So look at these themes. It's showing you their different colors. There's their primary color, secondary, the way they have the button shaped, all of that. I'll pick this slate one here. Looks pretty good to me. And what I like to do is when I'm grading a Bootswatch, you have the download button and you have this little arrow on the side. I like to click the arrow and pick which one I want. The minified version is the most performant. You got to be careful that you don't click save on it or your prettier will format it and it will no longer be minified. Minified means that there is no space between any of the text in the file. If you plan on editing anything though, or customizing it, then you're going to want to get the regular one. I'm just going to grab the minified one because it's smaller. And I'm going to drag this into my project now. So we'll go into index, open up my folder here. And what I'm going to do is actually open up my downloads from here. And I should be able to just drag this right in. And there it is. And then I'm going to rename this so that it has, get rid of that 2. So it's bootstrap.min.css. And then notice over here, it looks like it formatted. That's unfortunate. So it's not really minified anymore. Some of it might be still minified. Oh yeah, this is minified. We're only on 12 lines. So it's just the way it's formatted because my editor doesn't allow line wrap. So yeah, this is still good. So we have 12 lines of code and all of this is one big piece of text basically. And then we just want to import that in. So I'm going to go all the way back to the top of my file. How many lines do we got in here? We got almost 400 lines of code in this file. I'm going to remove this link to Bootstrap. And I'm going to link in the bootstrap.min.css. Live reload is not possible without a head or body tag. I must have broke something here. Let me copy this, and then I'm going to undo and see what happened. And then I'll paste it back in. Okay. So here is the new theme. You can see we have our success as like a dark button. So some of this stuff looks a little weird, like that light color on that dark background. Might have to go in and customize some of these. You can always just do an override on them. There's our form. But it's not too bad. It's a really nice way to just make it not look so generic and like that it was made with Bootstrap by using this theme. So I just wanted to bring that up one more time. Yeah, so, and then the last thing I wanted to show on W3 School, sorry for that little intermission there on the explanation, but I did want to show this one more time, how this works. Let me close that out. W3 Schools, we have the quiz on here. the Bootstrap 5 quiz. So let's check that out. We have 25 questions. The container class provides full width container spanning the entire width of the screen. We know that that's false. That would be the container fluid. And so that's how you would continue through this here. Does anyone have any questions? Anything at all? All right, if there are no questions, I'll stop recording. I'll get the breakout rooms going. Again, you want to work on any assignments you're missing. If you have any questions about whether you're missing assignments or not, let me know. I can go over that with you. I can open up another breakout room for one-on-one discussions if you want to discuss anything about your grades or anything like that. And we can make sure that everything is caught up and that everybody is on the right track to moving on to level 2. All right, so let me end the recording here.